industry experts from Powerhouse Brands. Earned Summit, Building a Community by Tribe Dynamics.
We'll let you guys all filter in. We'll give you a couple of minutes here. We started about a minute early. While we're doing that, we go through really quick introductions. Everybody can kind of say who they are and where they're from. Maybe Toto, do you want to start it out?
Sure. My name's Toto. I work at Benefit Cosmetics. I'm currently the head of global digital here. Broadcasting out of San Francisco, for those people wondering.
Hi everyone, I'm Susan Kim. I am the SVP of Digital and Marketing at Huda Beauty. You might hear my kids in the background. I'm out of Los Angeles.
Hi guys, I'm Mina, VP of Marketing at Farmacy Beauty. I am dialing in from New Jersey.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining. Obviously I'm Conor, or not obviously, I am one of the co-founders of Tribe Dynamics. I guys can't hear any sound. Let me know in the chat if other people are having a hard time hearing the sound right now. We should be good to go. You guys can hear me, correct? Okay, cool. We're good. All right. Let us know if there's any other problems. If they are, you can complain to help@zoom.com. So anyways, we're going to so today, this panel is going to be our beauty panel, so beauty marketing panel specifically. So we tried to select people that are, experts when it comes to digital marketing and marketing in general within the beauty space, and then ask them some questions that are specific to the industry, as well as just some general questions in terms of how they're navigating pretty unprecedented times. So the first one we're going to start out with is, so what are you guys reading? What are you listening to? Anything you're watching right now that helps you on the world, either personal or professional? Maybe we start with you, Susan.
Yeah, I read whatever Toto forwards to me. And basically, I think it's really interesting because when COVID first happened, a lot of articles came out about COVID, and what we saw from our research was that there was a little bit of COVID fatigue after the first couple of weeks. Readership across some of the other content increased, and what we found was that people just really wanted to have a little bit of mind share split to other categories. And so for me personally, what I'm not reading. I'm actually on TikTok a lot. I've actually transitioned all of my social media time from Instagram to TikTok. Deep dive into TikTok, and the content there has proliferated for sure, and it's highly entertaining. But from a consumer point of view and a marketing point of view, I find it interesting in terms of what are people engaging with, what is trending, and really what is the consumer behavior, and what are the topics that they're really focused on today.
Very cool. Yeah, I think TikTok is definitely going to be a hot topic. I know my whole family watches it constantly now. And I think there's going to be some permanent behavior change there. We've actually seen the amount of content being posted on Instagram as well. So I think that, some of that's getting stolen by TikTok. What are you reading, Toto?
Well, what I'm watching right now, also TikTok, the thing I like about TikTok is that there's so many old Viners that have moved over to TikTok now. And the comedy is just like on point. I mean, it's really refreshing to see, as opposed to just how polished Instagram has come. But, the thing I've been watching recently, not industry related, but it's these versus battles, like hip hop battles between, people like Swizz Beatz versus Timberland. They basically get on IG Live and they trash talk each other and play like, old tracks of music that they're into and that they're listening to, and everyone's commenting on it. It is so entertaining, and I think it's just so fascinating how IG Live has really got like a second life. With COVID, it was so dead before. Like we tried it, it didn't work, but now there's just so much good content on there. So I'm curious to see if that sticks around.
Yeah.
Toto are reading, watching very informative things. I'm watching like how to entertain toddlers during a pandemic, like blog posts and things like that. And actually what's interesting about Farmacy, we're a bit of a more a mission-driven brand. And so for me, it's actually been really important to stay on top of the news, to try to understand, like, there's so many things happening. What are young people concerned about? Particularly because a lot of like millennial and Gen Z, their job prospects have been impacted. So I've actually been watching more news than before. There's this one Instagrammer that I follow. Her name is Jessica Yellen, and she's a former CNN news correspondent. And every day she posts a video on Instagram, IGTV, to people who typically don't follow the news. So it's super informative. She speaks to like a younger audience. And when you read the comments and questions, I feel like a lot of them are people that buy pharmacy products per se. So it's interesting to get their perspective on like outside of the beauty space and outside of like social media, what are they thinking about, and what are they hoping for? What are they worried about?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting to see, like you see it in both sections. You see the news make its way into social media. And then, I'm in a household that watches the news now. And it seems like it's basically just a retweet or a regram of like the best content on social media. Like half of the news is just them sharing like, oh, this is what The Rock shared on his Instagram, which is kind of funny to see it go that direction. So I think one of the other things that we've been thinking a lot about, obviously, offline channels have been shut down, which all of you guys are in offline channels for distribution. And so, presumably that should result in some boost in sales on your online channels. Have certain areas done better than others? What has been the impact? How big is it? Have your retailer websites outperformed your websites? Would love to dive into that. And maybe this time we start with you, Mina.
Sure. So as a small indie brand, we've in the past relied extremely heavily on Sephora. So with the Sephora store closures, we were obviously really concerned. But luckily, a lot of that traffic has transferred to the online space. But obviously, you're not seeing the same experience. Like for a small brand like Farmacy, if you go into Sephora, to buy something from a benefit, you might, stop and see Farmacy and say, hey, what is this brand? Let me get that. We're not necessarily getting the benefit of that in-store kind of discovery. So we are like, although, our .com, Sephora.com sales have done pretty well, what we've actually seen is like an explosion on our own e-commerce, which has been typically secondary to Sephora. But we are seeing that with like tailored emails, with gifts with purchases, and a lot more personalized added value things that we can do and we can control that aren't necessarily available at Sephora. We've seen like a huge surge on our own .com, more so than Sephora.
Yeah, Toto, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen our own e-commerce business do really well. In addition, everyone is up crazy percentages. We're like, 50, 100, 150, 200, in different regions. I mean, it's not enough to offset how much business we lost, in the stores. But, I think you're starting to see some online retailers win better than other ones. Department store retailers, by and large, suck. They're losing all of their online share to these like pure play retailers like Look Fantastic out of the UK. They're so good at shifting their online spends to conquest, those department store buyers that, you look at the traffic numbers, go to SimilarWeb and just start comparing, between what, a Macy's.com is doing versus some of these pure players, and it's night and day. One is tanking and the other one is rising during this time. So, I mean, that's really, I think, what we're seeing. It's just this time is really accelerating that kind of downward trend for the department stores.
Yeah, you bring up a good point in terms of the different international markets. I know for Huda specifically, Susan, that, you guys are so big in the Middle East. Obviously you focus more on the US, but are you guys seeing different kind of trends across those two regions, or is it pretty similar in terms of the offline online behavior change?
Yeah, I mean, there is no offline at this point around the world. We saw not only brick and mortar closures in the US, but also around the world as well. And luckily for us, we were in a position even before COVID happened to really transform this pivot to D2C and to have a digital focus. And being smaller and indie and nimble, we were able to react very quickly when COVID really hit the US. And it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Everyone said like e-commerce really grew and D2C really grew during COVID. But for us, it's a little bit hard to separate out because the team reacted very quickly. We installed virtual beauty consultations on our site within a matter of a week, utilizing our field staff. We initiated a self-love sale, knowing that self-care during this time was so important to our consumers. We also shifted a ton of launches during our marketing calendar because Huda as a founder is incredibly contextual in how she feels and how she authentically reacts to the situation. And so, there are a lot of launch shifts, but this refocus on our D2C really helped drive that, pivot very quickly, but at the same time, knowing that we're part of, the omni-channel partners with Sephora exclusively in the US, we really did look at different content and activities that we could do with our channel partners to really drive that .com business as well. And, Toto touched upon the UK department stores versus some of the pure players. And very similarly, Cult Beauty is doing fantastically for us. Their increases are pretty tremendous. I mean, they're obviously a pure player e-tailer versus some of our other omni-channel and brick and mortar partners. So that is definitely the same sort of trajectory that we're seeing in that the downward trend in the department stores.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that was something that was happening. It makes sense that as a consumer, you're going to go to the best experience you can find, and no reason to have a lot of loyalty there in general. So have you guys seen, going back to kind of COVID, obviously other brands have made pivots as well, right? So they've made adjustments and done some things that I think are really exciting, whether it's, making their own masks, distributing hand sanitizer, or switching manufacturing like LVMH has done. Has there been anything that you guys think has been really inspiring, or, that you have noticed that another brand did that you really looked up to? Maybe we start with Toto this time.
Sure. The brand that I would call out is Il Makiage. They are a D2C brand. And, if you've seen the news recently, they've just been hiring hundreds and hundreds of unemployed beauty freelancers. I mean, it is amazing in an environment where everyone is getting furloughed to have a brand that is just hiring and hiring all these freelancers. I think it's so smart, both in terms of, building loyalty with their customers, giving them these additional services, but then just giving back to the community as well. I think, the economic impact of COVID is going to be pretty severe. And I think, brands standing behind, those makeup artists, and, Huda's done a great thing, by donating some funds to that as well. But it's, it's good business, and it means a lot for those people. They've basically created brand advocates like for life, right? Helping these people out during this time is going to reward them for a long time in coming.
Very cool. Mina, what about you?
Well, not to be self-serving, but I would just like to take this time to give a shout out to my team at Farmacy. I think it's important during this time to really lean into who you are as a brand. So for example, if I'm like, this is an example that sort of irks me, but if I'm a beauty brand, I don't think that people are coming to me for a yoga class on my Instagram channels and things like that. So anything you do, whether it's content or giving back, I think needs to tie to the brand. So for Farmacy, we're all about the farm. So for us, we had just discovered this organization called Feeding America. It's actually the largest hunger relief organization in the US. And what's cool about them is they're completely vertically integrated. So they have relationships with farmers. So they take that excess food and they're able to distribute it to people in need quickly so that the food doesn't go to waste. So we had devised like a long-term 3-year plan with Feeding America prior to COVID. But right after the pandemic, our account person at Feeding America reached out and just giving us an update that, I mean, it's just been totally crazy. There's not enough volunteers. A lot of CPG companies aren't able to donate what they were before. And there's a lot of people in need for food. So we were able to react very quickly and launch a campaign to provide 30,000 meals a day for 30 days. Additionally, we're encouraging our influencer community, our retail partners, our customers to also donate, and we will, match every single donation dollar for dollar. And even though we're a small brand and we can't necessarily contribute the way like a big Citibank or other organization will do, I think now is the time to kind of like stand up and, you know, tell the world who you are as a brand, like outside of like the pretty packaging and the pretty pictures and the pretty products that you're providing to people. So that's sort of my sort of self-serving response there.
Hey, you know, it counts. So Susan, I've heard that the skincare industry, both we're seeing it in the social data, right? So influencers are talking about skincare and self-care now more than they were in the past. You know, I know that Huda recently launched the Wishful line. How are you guys seeing skincare react versus cosmetics? Like, are you seeing differences there? And obviously Mina and Toto, you guys both, I mean, Mina's knee deep in the skincare industry and Benefit touches it as well. Love to hear from you guys also.
Yeah, so skincare for Huda is a really big focus for us. It is a separate brand from Huda Beauty. And we had launched with a scrub, a cleansing scrub, and it's a phenomenal product. And before we were launching, everyone said, you know, a color brand can't do skincare. You can't, like, Huda can't sell it. I mean, we got so much naysaying. And what was amazing is Huda, as an authentic leader and a visionary, really advocates for her DIY and has been studying skincare through the blog for over 10 years. And so this was a natural fit for her as well as her audience across her social platforms. And so skincare is performing extremely well for us. What's interesting is that it is consistent. It is not one of those launch and drops situations. It is not a hype sort of drop sort of model. It is launching and being really consistent with it. And what's interesting is that our second launch were 2 masks, Thirst Trap and Chin Lift. And again, everyone's like, oh, masks are proliferated the market. No one's gonna buy a mask. You can't differentiate with it. And again, we proved them wrong. And we actually did very well with both. And I think, you know, we talk a lot about like the lipstick effect in the beauty industry. I would like to call it the mask effect, if you will, because these masks are all about self-care, being at home, Instagramming it and taking that selfie, but also affordable at a price point that most people could achieve for a very small luxury. So having that part, you know, sort of product in this environment is extremely resonating.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mina, have you seen certain parts of your product catalog do better during COVID?
Well, yep. So similar to Susan, we've seen a surge in masks. I think it's like a low price point item and people can indulge. But for me, I think certain masks are a little bit commoditized, like your basic face mask. I think, you know, there might be a surge in the beginning, but I just think there's going to be sort of fatigue for it. Whereas I think what's interesting about the Wishful line is you guys have really interesting, like the chin mask and things like that. So I feel like those stand out and those are things that people will continue to indulge. And Susan, your chin looks great. I feel like maybe I need one as well. And also cleansers have exploded, which is really interesting to me because like Conor, this is the first time I've showered and like washed my face just for you in like several days. But apparently people are washing their face. So cleansers are like on fire. And also because people aren't wearing as much makeup, they're like trying to figure out like, okay, how do I get the best skin while I'm in quarantine? And so they're like going the extra mile. They're doing the eye cream, they're doing the treatment, they're doing the serum. So I would say both masks, which are like a lower price point self-care indulgence, cleansers for people who are more hygienic than I am, and then treatments where people are really going for the hard hitting like wrinkles and dark spots and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we're a little more focused on being clean. It'd be great to be Clorox right now. So Toto, you know, I know that in conversations we had, you had talked about seeing a real lift in your organic content performance, as well as your paid content, when it comes to both social, or primarily when it comes to social content. Is that something that you're continuing to see, or can you describe what that like and you know how you reacted to it? And I'm sure I'd love to get Mina and your opinions after as well.
Yeah, you know, I think social, we did see some spikes in some areas. It kind of goes up. It's There was high engagement, and there's a lot of fatigue out there right now as well in terms of content. You know, I think the more interesting play for me, Conor, oops, can you guys still hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the more interesting play for me is really with the paid side, because so many advertisers have pulled out. You know, CPM, CPCs are super cheap right now. And we're finding our retail partners being more willing than ever to do co-op advertising with us to help drive traffic to their sites, and they're sharing data there. And that's something unlike we've seen in the past, right? You know, where traditionally, you know, you talk to Sephora and they're like, you know, whatever, we got this. Now they're like, we need help driving traffic, you know, to our site. You know, let's start, you know, coming up with these share programs. So I think that's a really exciting development right now.
Yeah, what are you seeing, Susan? Are you guys kind of pushing on the ad side or continuing? I mean, Huda's historically been very organic driven.
Yeah, I mean, Huda is definitely very organic driven. We're not seeing a huge difference pre and post COVID in terms of social engagement. What we're seeing it vary is by product and by content and by launches. And so because we're very much of a new launch sort of driven brand, as well as creating a lot of content around that launches, as well as our core, what we're seeing is that the products that we know gets pretty consistent engagement will always get that engagement. And then what we like to talk about a lot in our social teams is like the cake and the vegetables. Like give them the cake, get that double tap, but also give them the vegetables that tells the brand story, and we'll be able to feed both sides. And so for us, we continue to do what we do as a social team to really be able to drive both our brand messaging as well as our organic social content that we know will gain engagement. On the paid side, it's hard to draw parallels because we are investing pretty heavily on the paid side to grow our D2C, but at the same time, you know, it's hard to draw a comparable to previous launches because it's just not the same context, it's not the same environment, and it's not the same products that we're advertising against. So it is very much, first and foremost, product related, and then also content related.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Farmacy, similar to what Toto was saying, we actually did a test where we did paid social from the Farmacy Instagram account driving to Sephora. So it'll be interesting to see what those results will yield. But it's actually, there's been a halo effect back to our own D2C in some instances. So I think it's a good, you know, tactic for us to try, particularly because if people don't know Farmacy as a brand, they might be scared to purchase. But if you have kind of the Sephora brand name to back you up, they're more likely to kind of click, even from just a general awareness perspective. And then from an engagement perspective, like we have been on fire, like organically. I think that our reach in general, our engagement, and also from the influencer side and UGC side, we've seen an explosion of stories, of comments, of DMs. Like our social and customer service team have been like around the clock 24/7, and we've actually invested more in like those customer service type functions as a result. And I think it's twofold. I think before brands were very polished with their content, but now at home, like my husband is my photographer. We've all been like stars of our own IGTVs. Like my mom was in a video. So I think it's the team has flourished in a way. Like we're just more creative. We're more scrappy. We don't have a videographer anymore. So we're just editing stuff on ourselves on our phone. So I think there's a lot more soul in the brand and personality to the brand recently. And I think it shows, like people want that connection. I agree that people are sort of, they're a little bit fatigued about COVID-19, but they are still looking for like authentic connections. And I think by us being in front of the camera and just being a little bit more raw with our content, that's really resonating.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something real to seeing someone in their own house. You know, like Toto's got his teal wall. These aren't my fish, but I've got fish. You know, I like, you see Good Morning America, you'll see, you know, the anchors in their houses with like, you know, in their kitchen. Like that's just like makes it so much more human, which I think people connect with for sure. So speaking of human, TikTok is kind of the epitome of you know,
Great transition, Connor. That was good.
seeing people dance in their socks in their house, right? So, and obviously it's been exploding in use on with our family. And you guys talked about it a little bit earlier, but from a brand level, how are you guys starting to think about participating in that conversation? I know, Susan, you're pretty passionate about it. Maybe we'll start with you. But yeah, how are you thinking about, as a brand, participating in that conversation? How are you approaching it? Would love to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I could start. Our team in the LA office started the Huda Beauty TikTok channel about 1.5 years ago. Super proud of that initiative. And we're the #1 beauty brand on TikTok at 1.6 million subscribers. And, initially we were repurposing Huda's tutorials, and initially we were just taking the content that was already on Instagram and putting it on the TikTok channel. And once Huda was like really into TikTok, mostly because she was inspired by her daughter Noor, she started creating content specifically for the channel. I mean, she is an incredibly intuitive content creator. She knew exactly what was trending and content to reflect not only what was part of the popular culture conversation on TikTok, but also, what really was authentic to her, from the ASRMs to the tutorials to the dances. She is just an incredible content creator when it comes to that platform. And so, especially during this time, we're seeing that our content is exploding on TikTok. It is doing very, very well. And she continues to create content at a regular pace for that platform. I'm really excited to see where TikTok is going to be going. It's a very different experience from a platform experience versus its partner in China, Douyin. I mean, the functionality and the user experience on Douyin is by far leaps and bounds from the US experience. So their commerce integration, as well as their live streaming integration, just so many different product features that they have on Douyin that I'm excited to see the evolution of TikTok. And also how they might see some of the challenges in the US market, especially when it comes to music licensing rights, as well as content creation. I think, what I've noticed is that there's a lot of inspiration from and derivatives of, but who really owns that challenge, or like who really owns the initial idea or the content that is all mixed together. So I'm really excited to see in which way the platform is going to be going. And obviously we'll be creating content that really gears towards our audience engagement.
Yeah, that makes sense. Congrats on being #1. I probably should know that. Tribe's tracking TikTok now. Shout out to Tribe. Okay.
Wait, Connor, you guys are tracking TikTok now?
You weren't part of the beta group, Toto.
I was. Okay.
It's getting released like end of next week to everybody. I think you guys might be early. I don't know, but yeah, we are. We're tracking it now. Toto, what's your deal with TikTok? What do you think?
Yeah, oh my gosh, so many things to build off of what Susan says. I agree with her. It's a really exciting platform for us right now. And benefits leaning into the humor part of TikTok, pretty heavily, because that's what it's about. But it's what Susan said rings true in so many ways. Like Huda being a natural entertainer and like being a content creator there is vital, right? Like TikTok out west, as opposed to doing in China, it feels like an organic play for brands right now. Like, and finding content creators that are just super engaging is really important. I mean, we're lucky in that we have this kind of global network of digital advocates throughout the world. Our person running our TikTok Netherlands channel is producing just some really great content. But that said, I'm really curious to see how the platform evolves as well. The music licensing is an interesting fact. TikTok created a new music license library, that brands can start to use now. So they're starting to make steps there. And I know in India, they actually signed with India's biggest record label to like actually license content there. So I think they see it as, a real weakness of theirs, and they're going hard to try to make sure it's still a brand safe place for people to kind of create content.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Apologies, we're doing some shuffling in the back here. My laptop is close to dying. Mina, how are you guys getting on with TikTok?
So I would say with Farmacy, we're still trying to figure out how to do TikTok. Like, as a brand, we don't want to be like somebody's mom getting on TikTok doing the same thing that their middle school daughter is doing per se. So like we just want to make sure that what we do is organic to us. Whereas, you know, Benefit is just a very fun, humorous brand, and that's part of their brand DNA. Like what you consider a typical TikTok content isn't necessarily Farmacy. So what we're doing instead is leaning heavily on influencers. But I think it's important for us, what I've noticed is the brand needs to guide the influencer. There's this one influencer, for example, who is super fun. She has a great personality. She does all of these like pranks and funny faces and just really engaging content. And when we approached her to say, hey, can you do a TikTok featuring one of our products? She's like, oh, sure, let me do like my morning routine. But I'm like, you know, nobody wants to see your morning routine. They like you because of like your attitude and your sass and your personality on TikTok. Like, we want you to have that same attitude and sass and fun personality, but how do you incorporate a skincare product in it? And it could just be totally goofy and silly but we don't want like a tutorial, because then we'd do that on YouTube, or we'd ask somebody on Instagram to do that. So I think for us, it's working with content creators and kind of learning together how does like a routine or education work on a platform like TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, creators are pretty key to most of the platforms. TikTok's really embraced them just because, you know, my friend isn't going to make the best video, right? It's just it's not the video that I want to watch on TikTok. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I know there's been a couple.
TikTok is paying a lot of creators too, Conor. Like their strategy at first was just massively go out and find the people who are entertaining and pay them to produce content.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it was really smart.
And they really focused on relationship building with those ex-finers very early from the start, and just keeping in contact with them. They basically did everything that Vine should have done.
Wait, that's so smart to go after the ex-Viners, to be like, we knew you way back then, come on back, it's even better. That's cool, I had no idea. That's actually, I mean, it's pretty similar to the way that the streaming platforms have done gaming, right? Like they're all to bring the best streamers to their platform, whether it's Twitch or otherwise. It's interesting.
But it's interesting because they're doing a creator first approach rather than advertising first, I think, Conor, like Instagram did, right? Instagram just basically let influencers kind of develop there and find a way to hustle for their own business. But, you know, TikTok is really trying to find a way to support them, which is great.
I mean, if you really think about it, right? Social media networks are basically just like another TV channel, right? Like you go there, you get to, you know, read interesting content, watch cool videos. It's just in this case, you don't have to pay anybody to create it. They create it for themselves. So, you know, if you support that community, then that results in better content, which ultimately results in more people coming to that platform. So it's, yeah, that's really smart. I had no idea they were doing that.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that like TikTok functions as a platform. It's very much like what becomes viral and what becomes popular is very algorithm dependent. It's not the social network amplifiable way of sharing and being able to enable your network to amplify to the power of, right? It's very much dependent on the algorithm and what TikTok as a platform determines that people like.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this question is really for all the digital marketers that are kind of tuned in. So what would be some of the tools that you're super reliant on that you're just really into? And we'll exclude Tribe for the moment. I'll just assume that the first answer would be Tribe. But, you know, outside of Tribe, what would be like, what's your top 2 or 3 tools? You're like, I love this. You should check it out, support them. What would be those? Maybe Mina, we start with you.
So for me, as a brand, Conor, I have to say we don't have money for a lot of software. So Tribe is one of very few ones that we invest in. And software is very costly. But so I'm a huge believer in social listening. Like I'm not talking about social listening tools. Like every single person on my team, they have to go in and respond to the comments, look at the DMs, look at the customer service emails, look at the Sephora.com reviews. And I do it weekly on a regular basis. So typically all the time, but especially with COVID happening. And I think you'll see, like, as you read, there's general themes that emerge, like 2 or 3 themes, and then you can react to it to say like, hey, people are complaining, for example, this is an example like at Ulta or Sephora, that the ship times are delayed. You guys think that we should run an ad with like free 2-day shipping. So even those types of insights, or people commenting saying, my Sephora order hasn't come, or, this other brand's masks, they had a sale, and if you guys did a sale, we would do it. So figuring out, like, even from an e-com perspective, like what gifts with purchase, what perks we should push in our emails and our ads has been, it's been really great to actually read the comments and look at the UGC. But aside from that, I think even just understanding, the general sentiment of what people want to see from brands in COVID has been really important to us. So that's my, cheap and cheerful answer.
Sure. All right. So do you have budget for other tools?
Yeah, so we use everything else but trust. No, just kidding. We actually are still an indie brand, and we are very, very scrappy. And because we are very socially native, it's very important, like Mina mentioned, to be listening to the social channels, not on our own channels, but really looking at what's happening on our own channels as well. I'm a big fan of Reddit. I feel like it is the tip of the iceberg whenever it comes to anything that might pop. I personally got involved in the Reddit thread on the 90-Day Fiancé whole, but really being able to go into the gurus and really be in those forums and look at the comments and see what people are saying and what's really being escalated is super important these days.
Yeah, that makes sense. Reddit's totally underrated. Mehdi, who was one of my earliest contacts, he was the old VP of digital at Nix, was all about Reddit, like very early on, which, a lot of people miss. Like they would do like customer service on Reddit. They would, just monitor it in general, because it's like the real, like, people on there are really into beauty. Like,
it's the real. It's the real.
For sure.
Like they'll come there first before anywhere else. So just seeing it very early there, it will just make you more prepared as a brand. Yeah.
Totally. What about you, Toto?
Yeah, I agree with Reddit. It's a great place to, Makeup Addiction is a great board, to look at. And there's a lot of other subboards too to check out. Definitely, it's a really great resource. I'll plug two partners that we think are pretty critical. One partner is for China, Park Lu, right? So they, if your business is operating in China, you need some sort of tribe-like equivalent to really understand, who's popping on Red, how they're doing, on these different channels that are specific to China. I think they're a great option. A lot of similar functionality. It's a very hard ecosystem as a Western brand or a global brand to penetrate unless you're there. And having a consolidated view is really important. So Park Lu. The other one I'd say is a company we use called Tribe Dynamics, and they're a video measurement platform. So, Tribe is, they index about 6 billion videos and counting now. And to be able to search through that, to understand trends and to really understand which creators are really starting to pop, it's been invaluable for us.
Is that you, Conor?
No, I think you got the shout out on accident. Which one was the video analytics platform? You said Tribe.
Oh, wait, Tubular Insight, sorry. Did I say Tribe? Sorry.
Tribe on the mind. That's on the mind. I like it. Okay, cool. So, Okay. So next, I think, given that, obviously budgets have to be reduced. So during a time when, sales are, not available in offline channels, you have to make decisions. Obviously we're in the influencer space. So, a lot of people in here will be interested in your views on that. How are you guys approaching your investments in the influencer space? Whether that's, obviously you're not doing any big events like you used to, but you've got mailers, you've got potentially paid ambassador relationships or paid content. How are you thinking about kind of your investment in that space? Have you dialed it back? Have you increased it? How have you adjusted it? I think people would love to know a little bit more about that as well. Maybe Toto, we start with you this time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with everyone here. I think we're still figuring it out. It's a different environment now, and a lot of the old things that we used to do are just so hard in this environment. Even something like product sense, not having access to, where we normally, pick and pack, ship that stuff. It's really hard to do a PR send, these days. So like trying to figure that out, I think is an ongoing challenge. I think where we're leaning into, Conor, is, trying to go back to the basics, and really making sure we're building relationships with the influencers that we think are best for our brand long term. We're leaning hard into the research that Tribe's done on retention, analysis, and how that drives EMV as a key tactic in terms of who we prioritize, going forward, because dollars are absolutely stretched. I think, the mindset that we're trying to put ourselves in is really, how do we support these influencers as businesses, right? I think they're seeing their revenue drop like no one's business right now as well. So, how can we find ways to continue to partner with them to support their ongoing career?
Totally. What about you, Susan? How are you guys adjusting things on the budget side?
Yeah, I mean, luckily for us, we, don't pay for influencer endorsements or any kind of content in that context. We do have a team that is very much invested in influencer relationships around the world. And obviously that stems from Huda and Mona's relationships with content creators, as they are content creators themselves. And, echoing what Toto said, it's really back to the basics of what works for Huda Beauty and for Wishful, which is that marriage of great product, amazing content, and then enabling commerce. And fueling that and picking where we want to make those investments that really fuels that organicness of the brand is where we're putting our bets in this environment that is so unsure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, to your point, we've seen the vast majority of the content that gets created about brands is organic and relate in nature, right? Obviously, I think paid relationships are a way to bring people in and make them a real part of the brand if you do it the right way. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what about you guys, Mina?
I know, Conor, you're a huge organic evangelist, and Farmacy to date hasn't really done a lot of paid partnerships to begin with, but we actually are investing in more influencer. We've had to, cut resources and headcount and freelancers in other places, but we're actually hiring more in the influencer space. To kind of what Toto and Susan were talking about, we just want to be able to continue to build those connections with influencers. And right now we have like a team of one, and that person to be able to individually reach out to all those influencers and collaborate is really difficult. So we are continuing to reach out there. In terms of budget, for us, as a brand in general, even before COVID, the concern with paying an influencer is like the floodgates open. And then influencers who would previously create content for free are now like, well, you paid my friend, so how come I'm not doing this for free anymore? Like, I'm not a sucker, which is totally like true. And I would say the same thing. And we just don't have the budget to pay that many influencers to begin with. So what we're actually doing, and we're testing out, that we just did with our new launches, we are paying select influencers, but not necessarily like do a IGTV or do a routine or post something on YouTube. What we're doing instead is, hey, here's like a flat fee. We want you to test this product for a month. And then, record how you use it, what your thoughts are. So we actually use it at them as more like consultants, if you will, on like product development, on how the best way to talk about benefits are. So instead of necessarily using influencers just for like, here's a hashtag ad or hashtag sponsor, we're utilizing them as actual consultants for their expertise. And their expertise is content, communication, and beauty.
Yeah, that makes. I mean, again, if you're, there's only a few ways to reach your customers right now. Influencers are one of them. Can't reach them in store. So I think we're up to our last question. Have to sign off. So, we talked about international, we talked a little bit about the Middle East with Huda, but, obviously China's a place where a lot of things are changing right now. They've gone through a pretty rapid decline in terms of the impact of COVID. Mina, I know that for you, China's really big for Farmacy, as I understand, and Toto as well. Would love to know kind of what you're seeing in international markets, China specifically. And then Susan, obviously, would love to hear if you're seeing something different in terms of the impact. Obviously, it could be impacting everything similarly, but Mina, maybe start with you. How's China going?
Sure. So it's interesting in February when, COVID first hit in Asia, we were, panicking about all the inventory that we had, but we actually saw a surge in orders in China, specifically for a product called Honey Potion, which is a warming mask. And we were like, I guess people are at home and they're, bored and they're sort of buying products. So it came as a huge shock to us. And so at the end of February, we really were like, okay, let's order all of our everything now and ramp up because, we might see that in the United States as well. And it's actually been, it has been telling. I think obviously there's been a huge slowdown overall, but we have seen specifically that one product, which is sort of our hero product in China and has gone viral like last year. We've continued to see strong sales of that product and even more so now in the US with COVID-19.
Yeah, what about you, Toto? How's China going?
China's starting to rebound. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's the lockdown has been gone for a couple weeks now. I think the interesting things that we're seeing definitely in China is that the selling holidays are still big. Women's Day, right after that they had right after they lifted up the lockdown, still set records in terms of online sales. The government itself is giving out massive incentives to businesses and people to travel and shop. So like they're all guns blazing to try to get their economy ramped back up, even to the point where we're doing our brow services there now as well. Everyone thought that the personal touch that you need when someone's doing your brow would take a while to come back. But what we're actually finding, Conor, that it's easier to control a one-on-one interaction for safety. Like you can control this person has gloves, this person is clean, this person's wearing a mask, as opposed to like a big crowd like milling around shopping in a store, which is almost even in more hazardous in some senses, for people. So it's that's where I think we're getting surprised is the return of high touch services quicker than we think it was going to happen.
Yeah, and for Huda Beauty, we did launch our Tmall store, cross-border e-commerce in February, and we launched it with a live stream with Austin Lee. And our Mercury Retrograde palette, which was released last year in the US, and globally actually sold out in about 3 minutes. And the entire live stream was supposed to last about 30 minutes. So that was fun. It's amazing because, a lot of people said like eyeshadow and color makeup will not sell in China, and we're actually seeing the opposite. Eyeshadow is actually on the rise pretty significantly. It's grown about 150% month over month, especially because, despite the fact that lips were heavily penetrated in China, people are now looking for mass-friendly makeup, if you will. And Huda being very much over-indexed and known for her amazing eyeshadow palettes, we've actually done very well with our initial launch. But also what's really interesting for us as a brand is the ecosystem of KOLs in China that really fuels a lot of the content, and being able to apply our business model, but in a different way in China is really exciting.
Totally.
I'll make a plug for live shopping as well. I don't know why the Western platforms haven't jumped on this, Conor. It is on fire in China right now. It's so easy for these influencers to jump on and just sell through so much inventory. I think Austin sold, something close to like 5 billion RMB during Double 11 last year. I mean, it is insane.
It's insane. And you see Instagram commerce and shopping trying to be something very similar and inspired by live streaming, but it's taken some really slow steps there.
Not there yet.
All right, guys. Well, I think we got to wrap it up. But thank you so much, Toto, Susan, Mina, for joining. I hope that was useful for everybody. We'll send around a recording of it afterwards in the next couple of days. But thanks so much. And I think everybody really appreciated it. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.